everyone, and welcome to the Dynasty Gambit, our off-season finale, because we are 1 week away from the NFL season. Can you feel the excitement, folks? Kyle Center here, as well as my co-hosts, starting with Brian. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good. I'm kind of sad to see it kind of happy sad that it's the last summer session. You know, it just means that football's next week. So it's, like I said, it's a happy sad. I've enjoyed doing this part, but it's time to go on to the real season. So
a bittersweet symphony for summer fantasy. I guess that's the S word there. Super. But SEC, I guess, is kind of the big conference in college, I suppose. I don't know college, but these two do. And we've got Van grad from Vanderbilt, Brian, and I guess my boy going to Florida Gator Jay. How are you doing, Jay?
I'm doing good, fellas. I'm doing good. I'm glad to finally meet Brian. We've missed each other over the last few shows where I've been on and he's been out, and then he was on and I was traveling. So glad to finally get to meet Brian, and we're going to spend the fall together and get to know each other and probably rag each other a little bit this football season. Even though we're talking NFL, we'll rag each other on the college side as well.
I'll have to admit, as a Vanderbilt graduate, we don't have a lot of things to boast about for football, but at least we won one last week, so we're 1-0. We're excited about that. So
it's a shame you had to go to the other side of the world to win that, but hey, a win's a win.
A win is a win, especially when you win by almost 50 points. So we're excited.
Right. Yep. Well, how are you?
I actually cracked my laptop, so maybe that real quick. So
that kind of cut in and out. I don't know if it was directed towards me.
Well, either you. This conversation was great. Keep going, guys.
Oh, I just because you are cutting in and out a little bit, but no, I almost look at Vandy like Jacksonville Jaguars, to be honest. Got to go across the ocean to go and get that W.
Well, exactly. I think that's the only game the Jags can win.
That's right. But yeah, I think we're going to talk about some of the last minute waiver or the claims and some of the cuts tonight. Is that not what we're going with this tonight, Kyle?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I know there's we'll plug one last thing. I know we kind of have a hard out tonight, so we can't necessarily extend this too late. Jay's got to be on for a PLP. And I know this may be not the greatest ad now because I think it's kind of done for this year, but next year, if you'd like your league to have a personal league podcast, feel free to go to goingfor2.com. There is a PLP section on the website, or feel free to message Jeff directly at Jeff Lambert 77. He's the big boss at Going for Two, the one that makes this all possible, sets up the Going for Two live network, which is on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. You can see the videos on Twitter, and I think you can comment on Twitter, but the problem is we can't see any comments that come through Twitter. So if you do want to comment and interact with us, feel free to head over to the Going for Two YouTube live page. So just type in Going for Two live on YouTube and you'll find the account there and the live feed. And we'll gladly take any questions, comments tonight, but we are, as Jay so eloquently mentioned, going to talk about just reactions to the fact that teams, I guess maybe just a little over 48 hours ago, announced their initial 53-man rosters. Who made the final teams, who didn't, and I know some players have changed locations, practice squads, and there's always cuts and movements afterwards, and that's gonna go up until February, right till the end of the year, isn't it? But anything that either of you want to talk about right now and stand out on this, I guess, your first episode together. So I don't know who I wanted to go first, to be honest.
The first thing I think we all need to do is just give our thoughts and prayers to Brian Robinson. Busted his ass to get on the field, take over that job, and to have what happened happen. Hopefully he comes back and is stronger for it. But so I don't want to leave him out of this because he did earn a job. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the encouraging news was he's already out of the hospital. From what I understand, they went ahead and kept him as part of the 53-man. They put him on injured reserve today. He has to sit out the first 4 weeks, but at the same time, they sound optimistic that he's going to have a full recovery, not only health-wise, but maybe even potentially part of the team this season. So, the news is awful, obviously, but there was a silver lining to it that he he's already was already out of stable and out of the hospital, and things must be going in the right direction for him, which is always a positive.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, after the initial shock of hearing that he was shot, it seems that the best case scenario has kind of gone every way since. The first thing they said was non-life threatening right away, which is where you'd think initially, and then the more you hear, okay, seems like it's not anything spinal, like he's not paralyzed, like and like you're saying, Brian, I thought the reports were that he was actually at the team facility, like at practice, obviously not practicing, but just there with the team. So already strong enough to kind of be out and about. And I know, part of it is his rehab process will probably be done with the team. So that's part of the state of this going forward for him anyway. But to see that was also encouraging, that he's not only out of the hospital, but kind of active, we'll say.
Yeah, I think after the initial news, I think everything that's come after that, as far as the news cycle, has all been good. So hopefully we'll see him on the field. If not if not the end of this year, we'll definitely see him next year for sure.
Well, and I think that's
as far as a fantasy implication. That's all right. As far as a fantasy implication, I'm definitely keeping him and stashing him. So.
Yeah, definitely in dynasty. He's definitely a hold. Don't go selling him off. You do have a taxi. A lot of the leagues had taxi spots. You could always put him on there until he's eligible. Until he's eligible to come back and play. So I mean, they're being a rookie, you got a lot of options with him. But he's definitely somebody you want to hold. So
well, and the fact that he's on injured reserve also gives some flexibility. You could put him on injured reserve in your league as well. And if you have a bunch of rookies, you can save that taxi squad spot for another rookie if there are limited spots. But I think just to talk about injured reserve, the way it works, because some players, have been announced basically on Tuesday that they've been put on IR, but the timing of is that before or after they've made the initial 53-man roster is key to can they play this year. Because if so, teams can place players on injured reserve and not have them count towards the 53. But if they do so, those players cannot play this season. It's season-ending IR if it's done before that. But any player that makes that 53-man roster can be placed on IR. And as you said, I think it's a 4-week minimum miss time. Obviously, I doubt he would be able to come back in that time. But once it's at that point, it's whenever he can. But that sounds like Washington thinks he'll be able to play this year. At least it doesn't mean he will, but at least thinks that it has a shot. Because if they didn't think he had a chance to, they probably would have just put him on IR. So I know just in terms of just that kind of dynamic, the Packers, I think that was an interesting one, not for the big names, but the fact that they only have 2 running backs right now on the active roster, and A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. But Kylan Hill, who made the 53-man roster, but or it doesn't count towards the 53-man roster because he's on the PUP list, and because he's been on the PUP list basically the entire offseason process. He tore his ACL mid-season last year. I remember it was the Cardinals game on that, I believe, Thursday night. So that would have been week 7, week 8. So what? That's like October-ish, I guess. Yeah, October, November maybe. But anyway, so that time frame, I also co-host the Full Press Packers pod. It's part of the stuff I don't do with Going for Two, but that was a discussion in the offseason my co-host and I had was who would be that third running back. And I thought maybe the Packers would do what I was talking about earlier and put Kylan Hill on injured reserve beforehand, and he can't play this year, and he's not going to count towards the roster spot at all. And then there'd be a third back, whether it was Patrick Taylor, who kind of was the guy that replaced Kylan Hill last year after his injury, or the undrafted free agent this year, Tyler Goodson, who I know quite a few of us in the dynasty community were a little surprised he went undrafted. Seemed like he was doing well there too, but and they brought back Dexter Williams, but yeah, that was probably never going to happen. He can't catch passes. And then so what ended up happening though is Kylan Hill basically counts as the third running back, but because he's on the PUP list, won't be eligible, I think, for the first 6 weeks. So at some point, Green Bay is probably going to sign a third running back. So that's a situation, not to kind of break the news, but kind of mention, like, I know in my head, I thinking through the cuts as a Packers fan, I'm thinking, man, if Philip Lindsay could go to the Packers, like, that'd be amazing. That's great as a third guy. Like, that's a third guy you don't mind even playing. Like, whereas, if it was Patrick Taylor, that's break glass in case of emergency. If it's a blowout, you don't care about efficiency or anything, put him in there. If it's any competitive snaps, it should be Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. But Philip Lindsay's so good that would kind of balance that. So something like that might happen. So I guess still be on the lookout for Packers news specifically. But I guess to the point of stashing, I think like I think only one Kylan Hill share, kind of held him through this. And I think because he's still on the pup list, you can keep him. Depends on your league designation, but most of them should be able to keep him on the injured reserve. So that's a good way to kind of stash him and not have a taxi squad spot count. It might not do much this year, but look for next year. I know there's maybe some contract uncertainty with Jones in terms of the Packers could get out of that easily. And especially if they, move towards the Dillon extension potentially, or decide to move on from him, maybe Kylan Hill gets more opportunity in the future. So that's someone to kind of maybe go look for in leagues, knowing that you can just put him straight on IR. And that's maybe an extra spot as opposed to using up a roster spot or a taxi squad spot. So that'd be my little one there. I'm sure there's much more bigger impact players to go with, but I love Kylan Hill.
So my question is, I saw Goodson got waived. Is there any talk of him coming back to the practice squad or anything like that?
He got signed to the practice squad from what I heard.
Yeah, I like his upside coming out of Iowa. I was, like you said, I was kind of surprised he went undrafted, but
I was surprised he went undrafted, and then I was shocked that they cut him. And then again, I'm surprised that nobody tried to pick him up, and let him get through all the waivers to get back to where Green Bay could put him on the practice squad. I'm shocked at all of that. So good for him.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that could be their plan ultimately, is they've got extra players right now. And once they free up a spot before week 1, they'll call him up and he'll be kind of the third guy on game day, unless maybe there's a free agent that they like out there. Because I know, again, we could talk about a few of those guys we could talk running backs, but I mean, I'm sure there's other positions as well. So, Brian, did you have anyone you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the biggest news that's already surfaced with the new team was Sony Michel. I was, I was surprised his landing spot with the Chargers. I think that's a really good landing spot, and being waived by the Dolphins. They had multiple veteran guys there, and they've kind of cut it down to Chase Edmonds. I guess is probably going to be not. I don't think Chase Edmonds is going to ever be a bell cow, but he's going to be their predominant back for now. But that was the biggest one to me. And like I said, he's landed with the Chargers, and I think he'll be the backup to Eckler. It might take a few weeks. Week 2 or 3 of the season, I don't know. It takes a little time to get completely up to scheme with a new offensive game plan, but still, that's the biggest one to me.
And then just as a consequence of that, I noticed Larry Roundtree was the odd man out, and he was the guy that got cut. So they're going with still Isaiah Spiller and still Joshua Kelly on the roster. It's I was honestly surprised he got cut by the Dolphins. I was kind of maybe predicting that he might not necessarily get more carries than Edmonds, but he might be like the goal line back, might have more touchdowns, might be almost the better fantasy asset in terms of like who scores more points. I think Edmonds is still the pass catcher, which that role's always kind of been there for Edmonds. I don't know if there's more touchdown upside with him now without Michel. Raheem Mostert's still there. I don't think Myles Gaskin's necessarily going to stop Edmonds playing goal line carries, but he hasn't really done that his whole career, so who knows? But yeah, it's do you think should this increase Edmonds' value or kind of keep it the same for you guys? What are you thinking?
I think it has to increase his value. I mean, the only thing you've got behind him is Mostert, which is, like so many people have said, made of glass, so I mean, the surprise to me, like you said, was them cutting Sony. But the other side of that coin was that just tells me everything that Chase Edmonds has done since he's gotten to Miami has been exactly what Miami wants to do. Now, at the same time, remember the head coach, where he's coming from, the Kyle Shanahan tree. They like 74 running backs and don't like to use any of them, but they want 74 on the team. So let's don't run out there and go get all the Chase Edmonds shares that you can get, but go get a few of them.
Yeah, I think, just to Patrick Harrison's comment here that not being the only one surprised by Michel getting cut, I think Myles Gaskin was the common name that everyone thought might get cut, and might be the guy that was out on that team, and they seem to like him. To me, I don't know. I guess if Edmonds can be that goal line guy, not having Michelle there will be great because that's one less guy to kind of take that away. But now I wonder because I was expecting, okay, Edmonds is going to have the clear third down role. He's going to be out there for all the passing downs. But that's basically Gaskin's best role. So now I actually wonder, just kind of the way this has gone, I almost not necessarily drop Edmonds, but I don't necessarily raise him as much because, again, no Michelle almost to me means Mostert's the primary goal line guy, not Edmonds. So I don't necessarily think there's much touchdown increase. And now that with Gaskin there, I almost think there's a risk of him losing receptions. So I think overall work, he'll probably get more, but is that just carries between the 20? I don't know. So I'm a little hesitant on Edmonds on this. I think to your point, Jay, if you and others are seeing a value bump, this actually might be a great time to sell Edmonds, to be honest. Like this could be a good sell window. Like, what do you think? Like, I don't think you could ever dream of getting a first for Edmonds, right? But
No.
2 seconds be something you could attain?
Something like that. One thing I did an article last year for another website about Chase Edmonds. He has always had a limited number of touches, regardless. They always talked about him at Arizona, that he was going to get more touches last year. And what do we see? He wasn't the one that got more touches. James Conner did. So I think his ceiling's capped. I think both him and Mostert get a bump. But like Kyle was saying, I don't think it's a huge bump by any means.
It's funny because, David Johnson was there and eventually he took over David Johnson. But as soon as that happened, they brought in Kenyon Drake and then Jake left and they brought in James Conner. Like the Cardinals were kind of signaling that they never thought that. Now, this is a completely new team that decided to as a free agent, pay Edmonds pretty good running back money for a couple of years. So this is also maybe a different team, different philosophy. So I think that's encouraging that this is a team that wants him. And Jade, all the points you were saying, like from training camp, it seems like he's been the guy. So, with good reason, he's the one that's going first in startups and in redraft drafts. And I guess it's just more, the question's not even more to his own team, but like just to where he's going drafts relative to others. Now I mentioned that the 2 seconds, just because I was in a league or I am in a league and just trying to buy running backs for that price, 2 seconds. Who could I get? And I went after, I think like guys like Fournette, Zeke, AJ Dillon, Cam Akers, players I don't want to give up a first for, but I'll give up 2 seconds. And yeah, those all got rejected flat out. And then I kind of like looking at the next tier of players, and it was, I guess, Antonio Gibson, Chase Edmonds, a couple guys we were talking about tonight. I'm hesitant to give up 2 seconds. I'd be fine giving up 1 second for them, but to your, like, do you think a second gets that done? Because the Edmonds manager put him on the trade block. So like motivation to sell, but also maybe thinking what I was just saying, are they thinking this is a sell high before the season starts?
I think this is a sell high window for him right now. I mean, it could get higher during the season. I mean, a couple games in the McDaniel system, I think it could be even higher. But right now, I wouldn't. If I was the one selling, I would not turn away 2 seconds. I don't know that I would turn away a second and a third, to be honest. I probably would want them both in the 2023 class. I wouldn't want to, separate them 123, 124 class. I'd want them both in the same class. But yeah, I'm with you on that. It would definitely be a second and a third would be like the least if I was selling him.
Okay. Interesting. That might be something I consider. I think now that the guys ahead of him, I've exhausted the price of 2 seconds. The guys I've got in that range. I think what I'm actually going to do is, okay, who can I get for just a third? So I'm going to try and go after some backs there. And if that's, I could still also double up and, okay, buy a player for a third and then also buy Edmonds for 2 seconds later. And so, yeah, I think that may be something I will do. I do want to talk a bit more about that league later, but we'll get to that towards the end. But just to, Patrick, again, thank you for joining and commenting. But will they run, quote unquote, the ball more with short passes and screens? So talking about the Dolphins, and I guess if they do, I mean, I'm sure some of those will go to Waddle and Hill. That's probably how their usage is going to be, a lot of short passes to them, but it could also mean short passes to the running back. So Edmonds could see a lot of targets. I know that, not something he's unaccustomed to. He was always the good third down back in the Cardinals. And while I mentioned, the touchdown upside, the lack of goal line carries, I do remember one of those years with the Cardinals, he was, I think, second on the team to only Hopkins in red zone targets, one of those seasons. I think it was one of those years with Kenyon Drake getting so many of the red zone carries, but Drake getting the carries, and then Edmonds would still have a red zone role, but through the passing game. So that also upside could still exist. So I guess we'll have to see how the Dolphins exactly use it, but this could be Edmonds' best season. I am just going to look up like what his best season catching wise is, and maybe
to add on to that though is what about a week or so ago we all saw the reports coming out and even the game the preseason game last week, they were using Tua in a lot more rollouts. There could be, they could use his legs as well, on them rollouts to open up that underneath the screens, that sort of thing. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you're what Patrick was saying there is running the ball on screens and passes. There could be those rollout reverse, or screens backwards, back over to Edmonds or something along those lines to try to open up the field.
Yeah, for sure. Quickly looked it up. So 2 years ago, Edmonds, that 2020, that was Drake's second season. The first season was just a half season, but they had Drake's full season with the Cardinals. Edmonds had 67 targets for 53 catches. Now, last year, he only had 43 catches, with James Conner taking a chunk, but that was also only in 12 games. So I just quickly did some math, extrapolated, and that would actually put him at 61 receptions if he kept that pace over his. So last year, even with Conner taking so much work, it still would have given him a career high in catches. So that type of 50, 60 catch season that's doable. I mean, last year, 60 catches would have put you fourth in running backs in receptions. I think, Harris and Eckler, I think we're close to 80. I think Fournette up there too. And I remember Josh Jacobs was fifth at 58 catches. So if you can get to 60, that's maybe not top 5 next year, but that'll be pretty close to that with potential of being it if a lot of the pass catchers we expect are injured, like a McCaffrey, for instance. That was a big thing last year. I mean, we'd normally expect him to do that, but he's not playing a full season, won't be able to accumulate those types of numbers. But yeah, so
that's what you're looking for in a running back as well. So I think that's fair.
If Edmonds can just get up to about 12 carries a game and 4 catches a game, basically get 16, 17 touches, he'll be at least the mid to low RB2, I would think.
So I guess since we're on running backs, I know I have a couple surprising cuts from running backs that I'm surprised did get cut by teams. But Jay, before I get there, is there anyone you wanted to mention?
Well, you had just talked about him. It brought his name up. I was very surprised just because they just paid, whatever it was, $11 million per year for 2 years this offseason, and then turn around and cut him this year. And now he's with Baltimore. I'm very interested to see what Drake's what that's gonna do. I've seen the videos of J.K. Dobbins, limping around. I've seen, I've heard about it. I just wonder, you got Mike Davis there. I'm wondering what that's gonna do, a la last year when we had all the injuries in the running back core in Baltimore, and then you had a Freeman, and then you had I can't remember the other guy's name now, but
Tyson Williams.
Yeah,
they also had Le'Veon Bell there at the end too.
Oh man, yeah,
guys,
Latavius.
Were and every single one of them were fantasy relevant for a week or two. So that's going to be an interesting little backfield they've got there when they're all healthy.
Yeah, because Gus Edwards is on short-term IR for 4 weeks as well. He's a big name to mention. So I don't know. I mean, Drake at the first could actually see pretty much half the workload, or maybe more if he's ready. So,
well, let me ask you this question right quick, Kyle and Brian. Let's say Kenyon Drake is a starter, just because JK's hurt, because that's what it looks like. Let's say he goes out there and throws up, 17, 18 points week 1, 17, 18 points week 2. Are you turning right around and flipping him? Because that's what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, you have to. I mean, I think off the top of my head, he's 28 years old, and if you get a couple of quick weeks like that, sure, you have to get what you can get, because I mean, Dobbins may be limping around now, but he'll be playing, and Gus Edwards will be back in week 5. So yeah, definitely go. That'll be your sell window for sure.
I don't think the sell window is going to last long either.
No, you got to turn it like a pancake. So,
well, and I think Jamie saying he missed the first 20 minutes of the show, but you came in just in time to mess up the comment I actually wanted to click on. So perfect timing, Jamie, by the way. We'll get back to that in a sec. But yeah, Patrick saying flip him as soon as you can. And but he does ask the question because, and this is what I want to bring up, is this whole depth chart looks really interesting. And actually there was a surprising cut I found, especially knowing they were bringing in Drake. I'm surprised they cut Tyler Batty. Now, I guess, did they sign him to the practice squad thinking as a 6th round pick?
I think I heard that they re-signed him to the practice squad, but I am not 100% on that one.
Okay, so that might be kind of why. And they wanted Drake and also, as Patrick mentioned, Mike Davis there. But also Justice Hill seems to be recovering well from, I think, was an Achilles injury, or was that another ACL, just like Dobbins and Edwards? But it seems like he's almost got the quickest timeline out of them. And I think he got injured right around the time Edwards did, which was a little bit after Dobbins. So Dobbins would have the longest timeline. I think the good news with Dobbins is, unlike Gus Edwards, he hasn't been put on the PUP list or the IR. I think he was on the PUP list initially in training camp. It was taken off. And so I know it's uncertain if Dobbins will play week 1, but I think that also means like the coach staff really doesn't know, which means that they're not for sure saying, no, he's not ready to play. He might be ready to play, but we really don't know yet. So I think I don't think it's an awful sign. And I think it's a good sign, actually, that obviously that he's not on the PUP list, but he could still start week 1. But yeah, I almost wonder, do you sell Drake just on this hype now, to be honest, of he might be a starter? Like, because, I mean, there's the scenario he comes out and smashes. What if he comes out and starts and doesn't play well necessarily, or Mike Davis gets starts? Suddenly there is no sell window. So I almost wonder if it's a sneaky kind of, like it's like a lower risk sell window right now. You could risk it, maybe get a bigger window and bigger return if he does go out and produce, but you might also lose it, and any value he did just gain suddenly might disappear. So just off the movement might be enough to make a sell window, to be honest, if you're willing to stomach maybe a lesser price than what the potential could be.
That's not a bad idea at all. And really what I foresee, it would not, I would almost be a little surprised if Dobbins isn't declared active, but none of them have a big role. I could see Davis, Drake, and also Dobbins all, get 10 to 12 touches or whatever. That sounds like a lot, but in the Ravens offense, it's really not that much. So
it was ugly last year. So like we all just kind of look at the whole situation and want to vomit. But like, if you look at the rookie season, that's all they've done these last 2 years is we're going to split all the backs, and like Dobbins rookie year, Ingram, Gus Edwards, and Dobbins all kind of splits and some work. And, Ingram got cut, and then it was kind of a 2-way split. So Dobbins actually was pretty useful towards the end of his rookie season because of that reason. But yeah, if Drake and Davis are cutting into his work through the early portions, and once Gus Edwards comes back, that could get ugly real quick. And to Patrick's credit, making Mark Andrews less attention towards him, perhaps. I mean, he should see a ton of targets no matter what the situation. So that's the guy you want, I guess, in Baltimore. But yeah, sorry, Jamie, that you missed the first 20 minutes. I guess we talked a lot about Chase Edmonds, so you really didn't miss necessarily too much. There's a good, you can always go back on the Going for Two live YouTube page in future days and check that out. And if you do so, anyone who is watching after the fact, we do appreciate any comments you put under the video. And as Jay's showing, the thumbs up, give us the like, and anyone who hasn't subscribed, also encourage that and appreciate that. Okay, so I guess the 2 running backs I want to talk about, one was Marlon Mack. Now, I think because of that, Dameon Pierce is coming on, and that's we can go into a whole Dameon Pierce discussion if we want to. I guess my hesitation with them is still that offensive line. It was the Football Outsiders graded it 32nd out of 32 teams last year in adjusted line yards. So their run blocking metrics, they were better in pass protection. Their adjusted sack rate was, I think, they were only the 10th worst instead of the absolute worst. But from a run blocking perspective, that line's bad. And I don't know that they really did much this offseason to address it. I think Tunsil's a good tackle, but that's also not necessarily where you need the interior to really help with a back like Pierce and get the goal line carries, the short yardage, the touchdown upside. So I did a touchdown projection series this year, just predicting every team's touchdowns. And I had the Texans as a team with 7 total rushing touchdowns. And I think I had it split, and Pierce might get that all to himself. And so 7 rushing touchdowns actually pretty decent, but I think that's almost the ceiling there. Like, I have a hard time, unless the offense line just suddenly plays better, which is always a possibility. Players can improve and get better, but that's my only hesitation with that. But it looks like he's probably going to see a bunch of carries this year. So I guess I had him at, I think, RB 8 or 9 in the class. That obviously looks a lot. That's probably wrong now.
Yeah, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I think we, as a community, have talked and watched, this skyrocket enough. And I'm a huge Dameon Pierce fan. I mean, he grew up an hour from me, went to school an hour and a half south of me as a Gator. So I'm a huge Dameon Pierce fan. The one thing that I will tell you, and I've said this over and over and over again, Florida used him the wrong way. Absolutely 100%. That's why he doesn't have the numbers. That's exactly why he wasn't as highly touted when he come out of school. But the one thing that a lot of people don't realize about him is he does have that pass reception trait. He can catch the ball. He can truly be a 3-down back. So I'm not saying that you're wrong with the 7 rushing touchdowns. And it's very possible in that offense, it could just be 7 touchdowns rushing, and all 7 of them are Dameon Pierce. Now, that being said, he's probably going to have a few receiving touchdowns because I think he's truly going to be that 3-down back. Marlon Mack, I think, is going to be, he's re-signed with them, going to the practice squad with the Texans. So I think he is the perfect running back for Dameon Pierce to learn the NFL style of ball from. What do you think about that, Brian?
I missed the very last part of you. We were talking about Marlon Mack. What was the last part of that?
Just saying that I think Marlon Mack is going to be a great mentor.
Yeah, and the one thing about Mack is, he's gone through a situation where he's been the backup with the Colts and stuff. So unlike Ryan Tannehill says he doesn't want to mentor certain folks, he'll come out and be the mentor. And right now, I know that Rex Burkhead is the other running back, and they promoted one other running back today, but I forget who it was off the top of my head. So it definitely is a Pierce backfield, and Mack is willing to be that person, I think, that will mentor him. And I think he'll get some opportunity later in the season. Marlon Mack will get some carries and some touches. So, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So the next player I did want to talk about was heading over to Marlon Mack's former team, the Colts, and Philip Lindsay getting cut. That'd be a guy I'd love to see on the Packers, for instance. I don't know if I already mentioned that. Maybe I didn't. Oh, okay. Actually, we have a question, Troy, before I get to the Colts talk. But Gibson for Dameon Pierce.
Hang on. Before you answer that, hang on 1 second. Destroyer
would be getting Pierce.
Okay, no. I thought at first when I first saw his name, I was like, "Is this the POP we're doing tonight?"
Oh man, hey, it might be. You never know. Coming to get some early glances. I mean, what do you guys think about this?
Gibson for Antonio Pierce, straight up.
That's what it looks like, yeah. And they like a Destroyer has Gibson already.
Boy,
so should they give up Gibson to get Pierce?
I'm assuming
I'm okay with it. I guess.
Is that right? I'm assuming this is Dynasty.
I guess I was making that assumption too. But if you want to Destroyer, give us some any more feedback. But also, is this an offer that you're thinking about, or is this an offer that was sent to you as well? Like that context too. Like, is this something that you could literally go and accept right now, or is this like something you're thinking about? But yeah, if it's Dynasty or redraft, I guess that probably would.
He's thinking about it. Oh Lord!
If it's redraft with the news to Robinson, I keep Gibson.
Yeah, I'm keeping Gibson.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, if I was really excited about it in Dynasty simply because of the trade value on it. Like, if you just take the 2 players out, if that was a deal that could be either player could be had for the other, what who's going to buy Gibson? Like, what are they willing to give up for Gibson right now? What are people willing to give up for Damian Pierce? I can't even say his name right. No wonder I don't like him. Maybe I need to like him better, and I'll learn his name better. But yeah, if that sort of ascending asset would make sense. Asking about Damian Harris instead of Pierce. See, I'm almost less likely to do that because it does seem like Damian Harris is going to be like the main goal line guy for the Patriots, and like who knows what's going to happen next year. I know everyone kind of wants to, have Mondre Stevenson, but I wonder if he plays more of the pass catching role, which could be good there. I don't know. I guess
if this was dynasty, I would do the Pierce for Gibson for one reason and one reason only, because I'm going to turn around and, like I said a minute ago, as big of a Pierce fan as I am, I'm so scared with these Michael Carters, these Trey Sermons, these running backs that are so highly touted that play 1 year and then, we'll get another guy, especially with the running backs that are coming in the next 2 years. So what I would be doing would be I would trade, Gibson for Pierce and then turn around in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks down the road and be looking to flip Pierce for more than what anybody's ever thought of, get a first and a second, and then probably another running back on top. Because right now,
I was gonna say I might take the buy window now and just take one first now. I think if you could flip Damian Pierce, like this is just kind of across any dynasty league. If you can flip Damian Pierce for a 23 first right now, I would do it. If it's a single quarterback league, I kind of get maybe the hesitation on that, the devalue the picks without the quarterbacks. But like any super flex league, I think you smash that 23 first, and that can be had now. I do wonder, like I think this, like just this trade alone, I think make symbolize like there's no way you'd be able to trade Damian Harris to get Damian Pierce right now in Dynasty. Could do it in redraft though, and I guess I understand. I think to me, I almost get it more with Gibson because I think I think the Patriots offense is good and they'll be able to keep afloat. Although I guess maybe with the offensive play caller there, maybe that's something you want to get out of. Maybe on second thought, I don't know that any of these offenses are that great. So if you think Pierce is going to be the guy and get the most opportunities, I suppose both pivots do make sense. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you have a preference? Like, let's say let's make the assumption Destroyer will trade for Pierce. Would you rather accept the trade for Gibson, or would you rather counter with Damian Harris?
Go ahead, Brian.
I think, honestly, I would counter with Damian Harris, just because the Patriots seem to really be favoring Ramondre Stevenson to some degree as well. I would rather hold Gibson for now because we don't know. I mean, before Robinson's incident on Sunday, I would have gone Gibson, but now knowing that Robinson is possibly out for a decent portion of the season, I think that Gibson's going to have more value. That's just my perspective, because Harris is fine, but he definitely maxed his potential last year, and now they're wanting to play more with Ramondre Stevenson, or at least some. So the competition is pretty stiff in New England's backfield, just like it always has been.
And here's the thing, I wonder. Yeah, okay, so maybe counter for the Damian Harris, and this may be something you can come back to in a certain extent, because I think I want to just check the schedule, but I'm pretty sure Washington has the Jaguars to start. Yeah, they do in Washington. So Washington, their home opener is against Jacksonville, week 1. That should be a pretty good game for Gibson. So that's also something, if you like after week 1, who do the Texans have? Because if that's a tough run game and he doesn't do so well, you might even be able to get you might be able to, like, something more in your favor than just Pierce. Like you might be able to get an extra player back. They have the Colts, it looks like. Probably a pretty good run defense. So I might look to try and see, like, if they don't accept Harris for Pierce, I'd look to see right after week 1, kind of project again, Gibson to smash against the Jaguars. We'll see. But I guess Jamie also chiming in here. So he traded Harris for the 206 back in May and drafted Damian Pierce. So, and now you wouldn't be able to trade Damian Harris for Damian Pierce straight up. So that's, it's funny because I'm thinking back to some drafts, and I know I've got quite a bit of Alec Pierce and John Mechie, and I'm thinking, oh, man, could I have taken Damian Pierce any of those? But to be honest, I think that the hype was there in a lot of the offseason. 206, I'm kind of thinking was actually maybe a later. That's like a later example of Damian Pierce. Like I know a lot of my rookie drafts, he went in the first, and especially later rookie drafts. Like I remember someone saying a rookie draft just a couple weeks ago, he was the 104. So just kind of, constantly ascending throughout the offseason. So and this is back in May, right? So like that, this is probably the time when he was going in the mid second was May. And then as just the offseason went, he was early second, late first, mid first now. So great move, Jamie.
One question I have in regards to Pierce's long-term value, I am hearing, and I don't know if anybody else has heard this, I'm assuming they have. I mean, first of all, we expect the Texans to be bad again regardless, right? Like near the top of the draft.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And I'm hearing that if the Texans are bad again, it would not be surprising that they reach out, being a local boy, and pick Bijan Robinson. Now, I don't know if y'all have heard that or not, but if that's the case, what Pierce is going to have value this year just because of pure volume. But what about next year? If that's the case, he's not starting over Bijan Robinson. He's not that good.
No,
Well,
for
no,
sure.
but at the same side of that coin, I mean, you're talking in the top 3, top 4 picks.
Well, I'd almost imagine it would be their second pick. Like none of the running backs go in the first round, and they get their kind of pick of the litter of the second round. Because I mean, if they're at the top of the first, I'd imagine they're going quarterback.
Well, I don't know. Davis Mills is pretty good. Don't. They've got a lot of other holes to fill.
I do agree, but I think that's just one of those where, like, I don't know. I have a hard time seeing, like, if you're top 3 back-to-back years and you don't take a quarterback either year, that feels like it was good to not do it last year because it didn't seem like there was any quarterbacks that were worth it. If Davis Mills had come out last year, they might have taken him 103, and then they wouldn't worry about it the rest of this year, right? Because to your credit, like if they had done that, they probably definitely wouldn't be thinking quarterback next year. But yet, because he was a 3rd round pick 2 years ago, I don't know. I think it from the looks of it, it'd have to be a top 2 pick though. Like if they're picking 3rd again, then they may miss out on the top tier of quarterbacks and not have a choice but to go with Mills again too. So you're almost hoping that they finish bad, but just finish bottom, finish 3rd again in the draft. Don't be the 2 worst teams in the league. Be the 3rd worst.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess Patrick does not want Bijan going to the Texans. Don't put that. It's funny because everyone seemed to want Hall to go to the Texans, or we're kind of expecting that this year. So I guess we just like to be masochistic as a fantasy community and like, okay, just put the best running backs in the worst spots. Think that's kind of like Carter with Hall this year if they draft Bijan. I mean, I can't remember, one of you two mentioned that. That exact comparison. Actually, Jay, it might have been you, right? Like just the worry of the 4th round pick like Michael Carter.
Yeah, that's exactly why I'm like, after week 4, week 5, if Pierce is getting the production, getting the targets, you have to look at capitalizing on it and collecting picks, collecting players, collecting whatever you can collect for him. Because, again, you're looking at a Michael Carter situation, you're looking at a Trey Sermon situation, you're looking, all these running backs that, are good, highly touted coming out. And then we turn around and, well, we're gonna committee backfield everybody.
I guess the Colts is not a committee. It's very clearly Jonathan Taylor, and the Nyheim Hines will end up on passing downs. They only kept one other running back, like we were mentioning earlier. Phillip Lindsay cut by the Colts. They kept Deion Jackson, and so a little tap on the back for myself. In my initial film evaluation of the 2021 running backs, I had Najee Harris at 1. I think the highest score I've ever had graded for any running back. Number 2 was Deion Jackson in that class. So, and I mean, he went undrafted, and I think I may have drafted it or had him in one league just to say I had him. And suddenly, like, the fact that he's the 3rd running back in the Colts, like I've gone and added shares, and I think he's my most rostered running back. Part of that is also JaMychal Hasty getting cut. So he was my most rostered running back before that, and someone had to replace those 5-6 shares. So swap out Hasty for Deion Jackson, the other UDFA that I just so love every year. I got better this year because my guy this year was Keontae Ingram. He actually got drafted, so I guess I'm getting better at evaluating. 6th round, so yeah. But okay, so Destroyer. I guess I wonder if they'll destroy this trade, but just kidding. But Gibson and Julio Jones for Pierce and Christian Kirk. The one thing about that I don't love is that Julio Jones is in by far the best offense. I don't love necessarily trading away from a great offense into two AFC South offenses. Yeah. Sorry, AFC South fans, but that would be my only hesitation. But if Julio is as injured this year as he was last year, then the production you should get out of Kirk will trump that. So it's a risk either way. I mean, you're risking a lot on Gibson. What's his role going to be versus a lot of risk on Pierce for a guy we haven't seen play an NFL game yet. So this is interesting. I don't know. Do you guys like that better than just giving up Gibson straight up for Pierce?
What was the trade again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Just what I have on the screen. Gibson and Julio Jones for Pierce and Christian Kirk. Again, knowing this is redraft.
It is redraft?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so you once again it's Gibson and Julio. I would rather have that side, to be honest.
So I think I kind of you guys, what you were saying earlier kind of talked me into, I think, try and trade Damian Harris as opposed to Antonio Gibson. And again, I think the time to sell Gibson might be after they play the Jaguars. It's a notoriously bad run defense, and that's kind of Gibson's role. Because I think was it Patrick that mentioned, McKissick's still there to take away catches, right? So what you need is just pure efficiency. Yeah, and I mean, I'd be okay with it. Like, are we okay with it? Like a Julio and Damian Harris for Pierce and Christian Kirk?
I would do that.
You're getting younger at each position, which I suppose in redraft isn't necessarily as important as it is in dynasty, but still that could mean like, okay, those older guys kind of slow down as the year goes on, the younger guys ascend. So maybe that's the counter. So I say go ahead and try. Now the other manager may not want Julio at all, so that might almost hurt you in the trade, in which case try the Harris for Pierce straight up. So you've got options here, especially if they sent you the offer. It clearly means they want Pierce. So yeah, you can, or no, sorry, the other way around. They want Gibson. I guess if they're targeting Gibson, they may not want to. I almost wonder, is it keep Pierce and try and find another way to another piece to acquire instead of Gibson and try and, I don't know. There's definitely ways to go about this, but I suppose see if you can get Damian Pierce. Everyone kind of wants to. I have no share, so I'm on the outside sitting, looking in right now. So don't be like me, but I have tons of Deion Jackson shares. That's great. And tons of time on the running back. So is there any other position that we want to talk about?
Well, let's do this right quick. Jamie's got a question over. Let's pull that question right quick, if you don't mind. And I'll make this real quick. Okay, so in redraft, 101. In the way in redraft, the way I like to attack it is I'm going for upside. And this is a 1-year deal. I'm not trying to worry about 2 years down the road, 3 years. I don't care. This answer is CMC all day, every day. Because if he is on the field, he smashes. He's 28, 29 points weekly. Whereas if you look at what Taylor did last year, it was 23, 24, 25, the lowest in 5, 6 years, 7 years of a
from an RB1. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So this is an easy smash on CMC if you have 101 in redraft.
Any credence to Taylor if it's half-point PPR and all those McCaffrey receptions are counting for less?
No. I'm still taking CMC.
CMC over Taylor, right? In all honesty, I just had in our homeboys league that's been together for 20 plus years. I was at the one. I took Taylor only because I don't ever feel like you can lose. I don't ever feel like you can win your draft in the first round, but I sure as heck think you can lose it. And I don't know. The injury concern with CMC bothered me too much.
To Jay's point, though, Taylor did get a lot of carries last year, so it's not to say that he's without injury risk either, because I think there definitely is. I think with Taylor, though, is last year, he had so many touchdowns, but it was also based on volume. So it wasn't necessarily a huge fluky season. Like in my touchdown projections, I have him leading the league in scrimmage touchdowns again, just because that's, I think, the safest bet to make, because we've seen how much opportunity they'll get, but also how efficient he's also been with the opportunity. So it's kind of the mix of both. He's got the O-line to help him out. His individual ability is fantastic. I think we might even call him the best and most talented pure running back in the NFL, unless it is still Nick Chubb, because I know we all love to talk about how great of a runner Nick Chubb is. But so I think there is upside with Taylor to even maybe potentially catch more passes as well. And he might be able to push like to a 26 point per game season in full point PPR if he can get those added receptions now with Matt Ryan at quarterback. So I do think there is a chance he also has some upside. I had the 101 as well in a draft, Brian, in a redraft, and I took Taylor as well. So I think you can look at it in either way. Full point PPR probably, because that league was a half point PPR. So if it was full point PPR, that might have been enough to sway me to McCaffrey. So to me, it almost might come down to the scoring settings like that. Whereas I know with Jay, you were saying half point, full point doesn't matter. It's McCaffrey.
Well, and the reason I say it doesn't matter is, they've made it very, very clear that Nyheim Hines is going to be part of the offense. With Matt Ryan at quarterback, they are not going to be running the ball nearly as much as they did last year. Taylor's not going to get as many touches out of the backfield. Now, he may get some receiving, absolutely 100%. But as with Matt Ryan, you get Pierce, you've got Pittman, they're going to throw the ball a lot more. It is a proven fact that if you want to win in the playoffs or get to the playoffs, you have to pass the ball. You cannot just run yourself to the playoffs and then get through the playoffs. Jacksonville Jaguars ruined that for them last year because they tried to run too much.
Yeah, the Titans have shown that recently, for sure.
Well, I mean, the Eagles showed it last year too. I mean, there's such a good running team, and I mean, for them, they ran into the best run defense in the league, so that was almost unfair. But yeah, best run defense and best quarterback of all time. Now, this is interesting. Patrick's bringing something up. Oh. Is that the last touchdown Brady threw or not?
No.
You didn't spend $50,000 on that, did you?
No. Not this guy. Not this guy. I've got plenty more to spend that kind of money on.
Yeah. You're making smart fantasy decisions as well, and smart financial decisions, and not spend it all on a football. You could spend a lot of money on football in general, just not one football in particular. But right. Patrick just bringing up a question. This is interesting because I actually have no idea what this is about. So thoughts on the Monty news and the Bears not seeing him fit with the new offense. Have either of you heard anything? Because this is news to me.
I heard that Khalil Herbert was going to be a lot more involved this year. I hadn't heard anything that Monty wasn't going to be RB1. So that is news to myself.
I mean, I think is Khalil Herbert hurt right now? Like, I don't because I think the preseason usage was Montgomery was playing all the snaps with Fields, like he's the clear one and he's the main guy. But here's the thing with Montgomery. I mean, maybe this coaching staff goes completely differently. 242 carries, 247, and then in only 13 games, 225. I mean, that's all he's done is get opportunities. Until, for me, I say, Patrick, personally, my thoughts, I have no effect at all. The Bears can say whatever they want, and I'm not sure that anyone's actually said anything. Their actions will speak louder. If he doesn't get double-digit carries throughout the season, then I'd be worried. But at this point, there's nothing they can say before week 1 that's going to maybe make me change my thoughts on Monty. I still think he's probably in line for over 200 carries. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's 54 receptions, 42 last year. Again, only 13 games, didn't miss a few. So that's basically right around Chase Edmonds. And we talk about Chase Edmonds as his pass catching back, but that's basically what Montgomery has been catching, what Edmonds done, but Montgomery's been getting like all the carries on top of that. So I wouldn't be shocked if Montgomery's second on the Bears in receptions this year. I know the favorite to do that is Cole Kmet, but Cole Kmet hasn't necessarily shown that level either. I think Mooney's very clearly going to lead the team in targets, but number 2 might be Montgomery, or at least a close enough third to where you might get more catches than Kmet. So I'm all in on Montgomery this year, but that's just me. So I don't know if you guys want to, I can stop my Montgomery diatribe if anyone wants to talk me off it.
No, I mean Montgomery's still going to have his role. I just think in the offense, the way it's set up with the Bears having limited options in the passing game and us being uncertain what Fields is going to look like, I think Khalil Herbert will be several weeks. He'll be an RB3/flex kind of guy that you can use from week to week. But Montgomery's still going to get his. It's just going to be more even more running game based, even more than last year. So.
Yeah, and I think Herbert showed up, when Montgomery was injured last year, so he proved that he could, take the reins. But I don't. They're not gonna, at least in my mind, they're not gonna just give him the reins over Monty. I don't see that.
That's not happening. They'll utilize both of them. As we all know, pretty much the NFL now, you don't really have very many just dominant solo backs out there anymore anyway. Even Jonathan Taylor has Naheem Hines pitching in some. So I think it just means the Bears offense will really try to get both running backs involved. But Montgomery's not going to lose his role.
And because my thing with Herbert was that the talk of Treston Ebner might actually be the backup. I mean, that's the guy that this regime has picked. Like this current GM and coaching staff did not draft Khalil Herbert. So I also thought, is Khalil Herbert being overrated because I don't necessarily think it's just going to be Monty and Herbert. I think it's maybe a three-way split where it's Montgomery's getting most of it, but then who's that backup might change between Herbert and Ebner. I think the one thing with Herbert is he's not really a pass catcher. He had 14 receptions last year. Half of those were in the 2 games he started in favor of Montgomery. I guess there were 3 games actually. I guess 13 is 4 games. Sorry, 4 games. The first game he didn't have any catches, and then had 9 receptions in the next 3 where he was the lead back. And then I guess basically had 5 catches the rest of the year. So it seemed like and again, different coaching staff, but player tendencies wise, Montgomery's their third down back, their pass catching back, which they may not throw enough for that to matter. But it does seem like Herbert's role, I might disagree with you a bit, Brian, because it seems like Herbert's role is just going to be to spill Montgomery. We're going to give him some carries away from him, but he's not going to have his own role. Like he's going to be the goal line backer. He's going to be the third down back. They'll take stuff away from Montgomery, which means Herbert might get a lot of the not so valuable touches. So I don't love Herbert in fantasy. He's like, to me, I wouldn't draft him in redraft because I don't necessarily, again, with Ebner there, I'm not entirely convinced he's the main handcuff. Like I know the talk in the offseason was people were hyping Herbert up as like, oh, he's going to be one of the more valuable handcuffs to have in fantasy. I'm not convinced of that personally. I don't know that that's an offense you necessarily want to buy into anyway.
Yeah, there's only a few pieces of that offense I want to grab anyway.
Montgomery, Mooney, Fields,
Kmet. I like Kmet. I think Kmet.
Yeah.
You look at Kmet from, again, you're talking about different coaching staff, different schemes, but you look at Kmet last year, and I want to say just in targets alone, he was a top 12, top 13.
I think so. Yeah, he was up there in catches and receptions, but
the reason he
0 for touchdowns.
Exactly, the 0 touchdowns. So that's
no Jimmy Graham to vulture them. It's who's there? I think it's Ryan Griffin that's the main backup tight end. He could in theory.
Maybe that's the guy we need to go get instead of Kmet. I mean, that might be tight end too.
And to Jamie's credit, like Herbert was a top 8 to 10 running back those weeks Monty was out. But again, no Travis Ebner there last year, and then it's hoping for the Montgomery injury. And my point is, I don't think Herbert has much standalone value. If Montgomery's hurt, then I don't think Herbert's doing much for you. You might get some carries between the 20. Unless he's scoring a touchdown, it's probably not making a dent in as someone you want to play in fantasy. And it's going to be really tough which weeks are the vultures going to score? Like you don't really want to start Ryan Griffin thinking, okay, he might vulture a touchdown this week. Right. So I'm a little out on Khalil Herbert, I think. And I don't know if that's kind of Patrick. I know that the question started because of your comment, but I don't know if that's kind of what you're thinking of, like, Monty not being a fit for the new offense is because Herbert's going to take over. I don't really see that happening. And I mean, if they really believed in Travis Ebner that much, they wouldn't have waited to the 7th round to take him. And I don't know about you guys. I had no idea who that was before the draft. So that was someone I definitely had to kind of go look at, but not someone I'm totally impressed with as a profile, anything. So I don't know. I think all to say
the Bears better pieces. You're not they can't be the centerpiece of your fantasy team. I mean, Fields is a QB2, Montgomery's an RB2, Mooney's a wide receiver 2/3, Komet's a low end tight end 1. So if you're building your fantasy team around Bears players, it may not end well this year.
Well, and I would imagine you don't want to necessarily, if you're going to ever double dip in offenses, you want them to be the high scoring offenses anyway. But I think you can take any of those players because they're coming in at values. They're not going as I guess maybe Komet might be going as a top 12 tight end in drafts, but I think for tight ends personally with redraft, to me, what order they're going in is less important than what round you're taking them in. I don't, if the tight end 7 is going in the 5th round, that's probably really not good. But if people are really patient after Hawkinson and Goddard, because usually it's Goddard. Like if I've seen some ADP where Goddard and Hawkinson are going in the same round, I just don't get the hype with Goddard at all. But Jamie's mentioning he'd take the chance on Chris Evans instead of Herbert. And I love that for the offense, the Bengals offense. But I also think Evans is someone who showed very little on the ground last year, but actually was playing on third downs with the pass catching role. So I just like that in general, getting the pass catching back, because you can maybe predict those games more. You want Chris Evans in weeks where the Bengals are going to be in shootouts, where there's going to be a lot of times where they're taking Mixon out on third downs to presumably put in Chris Evans. I think would be his role. The only thing I would say is Samaje Perine being there makes it so that Chris Evans isn't a pure handcuff in the sense. But again, I might think that with Herbert as well. So yeah, I agree with Jamie. Chris Evans over Khalil Herbert. I don't know if you both agree with that.
Oh, 100%. It goes right back to what you just said. If you're going to double dip, triple dip, whatever, get handcuffs, you want to do that in good offenses. And that's a damn good offense. If something happens with Mixon and you've got Evans right there, I mean, you've got another back that can run behind an offensive line that is built to run the ball.
Yeah, I mean, as a pure backup, you have to go Evans there. But at the same time, if Mixon gets hurt, they're gonna definitely split that backfield more than the Bears would. But the Bengals have the better offense to begin with, so I would take that chance.
Yeah, I think you'll get more usable weeks out of Evans. And I mean, you're at a point where you don't really need to count on him to start for you most weeks anyway. But that the off chance that his pass catching role evolves in year 2, I think is key there for Evans. So yeah, so that's a ton of time about the running backs. It's just basically a running back special. I love it. Don't want to talk about any other position.
I have a question for you, Kyle, because this is something that I don't know if Brian does this as much I don't know if it'll apply to a lot of our viewers right now, but I want to hear your take on 2 things. First of all, the Chauncey Gardner Johnson trade going to Philly, being that you're an IDP guy. And then also surprising news coming down today that instead of trading Blake Martinez, the Giants decide to cut him. I think that's very interesting.
Okay, so what I know about Martinez comes from a bit of a Packers perspective as well, because he used to play for the Packers. Great tackler, would accumulate tons of tackles every year. So from an IDP perspective, it's great because he would the tackle totals. He would lead. I think every year he started as the linebacker for the Packers, he led the team in tackles. But he was awful in coverage. So from a defensive scheme point, some defensive coordinators really don't like that. They need their linebackers to be really good in coverage. I know that was the whole thing. Joe Barry showing up as the Packers defensive coordinator, they decided to let him go as a free agent. And I know he was quite emotional after the last playoff game, knowing that they kind of had talked about that and kind of, we don't think we want you back next year. Like, we're not even going to offer you a contract, basically. Like, I think part of it was not that we don't think you're worth a contract, but we know that others are going to pay you to be a starting, like big bucket linebacker. We don't have any interest in doing that. So I think he had known actually quite a while that was going to be his last year in Green Bay. And so it's, I guess, with Dable coming in, new defensive coordinator, I'm just surprised of the timing of this. Like, I figured if this was a struggle, they would have looked to shop him earlier in the offseason. Does this mean they tried and no one wanted to trade for him? Because I guess, the off-ball tackling linebacker is not necessarily as valued. You can find people that can do that can, as much as he's a great tackler and can do that well, you You feel like you can find that more with linebackers, but the guys in coverage that really help against the passing game are tough to find. So that would be my takeaway from that, is his limitations in coverage are what led him to be cut more than anything. As for Chauncey Gardner, man, the Eagles and Saints just love back and forth with the defensive backs. I know Malcolm Jenkins is obviously the big case there. IDP wise, I mean, he's a corner, so I tend to just avoid corners. I want the safeties if I'm forced to play defensive backs. Now, again, back to the PLP, which I guess it's one in about 20 minutes, so we're going to have to get out of here soon for Jay. But that league had it split where you had to start safeties and corners. So that's a little different. That would be the types of leagues where you'd want to target him. Just knowing the Eagles have also had struggles at cornerback, he's probably going to play a lot of snaps. Might see a lot of targets too. Teams might think, oh, he's a new guy, let's target him. He doesn't know the system as well, so that might be someone that could, like from fantasy wise, okay, a player joining a team, you like Sony Michel, you're mentioning this earlier, Brian. It might take him time to acclimate to the offense. You wouldn't want to play him if you got the shot right away. Like let's say Eckler gets hurt week 1. Michel might not be the guy right away week 1. You'd maybe not want to start him then. You want to wait till he acclimates. But if someone's forced to play on defense, especially from a defensive back, they have to acclimate. Maybe the opposing quarterback knows that they'll target them more and more tackles, more opportunities to score fantasy points. So that might be something where he becomes useful. But again, I think only in leagues where you have to start a corner, because he is a corner, right? I'm not mixing that up.
Yeah, he's a corner.
Yes. So yeah, if in leagues where it's just defensive back, not interested, because and again, that'll depend on the scoring setting. Most of the time you want the safeties who will be, especially the strong safeties who will likely get a lot of tackles, as well as like the big play potential. So that's just the one thing about the corners that I like less for IDP purposes.
Excellent. Appreciate that.
Brian, I think you do IDP, right, Brian?
I don't really do IDP. That's
Okay.
about the only genre I don't do. I do a couple of leagues that have like 3 IDP positions, but I don't do much more than that. I barely dab my toe in it.
Because I know Christian Williams is a big guy. I know you podcast with Christian. So I just I wondered if that connection was there.
Yeah, no, Christian's an awesome guy, and like I said, I've worked with him, but he knows more. He's forgotten more about IDP than I'll ever know. So.
Yeah, Christian, great guy. Formerly, part of the Devi Royale, which used to be on the Going for Two Live network, which again, we're here on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. So appreciate that. Subscribe, like, and comment on the video if you will, please. But yeah, I guess any other players that you want to talk about, just the news, any players you're trying to target and buy right now?
Well, I mean, in terms of free agency, I mean, the waiver move and all that, the one name we haven't mentioned, and I don't even know what kind of role he'll have. I saw O.J. Howard got cut by the Bills and picked up today by the Texans. And the Texans need to make another move today, but that one's kind of like in the recesses of my mind. I can't forget the other name. I thought it was a wide receiver they picked up today.
No, they picked him up yesterday. It was Tyler Johnson.
Yeah.
That's who I was thinking of. Yeah, so they made some moves. I mean, I think both those moves could help. And Tyler Johnson, to me, long-term dynasty, I really, really like him.
Yeah, remember it seemed like he was highly touted coming out, fell in the draft to the Bucks. It seemed like that's a tough receiver room to crack, so it took him a while. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's the number 3 there by the end of the year, behind only Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins. I don't think his presence there affects them at all. But OJ Howard, I don't think he's playing ahead of Brevin Jordan, but that's another. I mean, he could be the number 2 tight end at some point in the season. I think Pharaoh Brown's the only guy really ahead of him. They cut Jordan Akins, so yeah, good points about the Texans. A lot of Texans talk tonight.
Yeah, they're trying. I mean, they're still a long way away, but they're at least making an effort. And there's some teams that have similar records that aren't trying nearly as hard. So,
yeah. And the Tyler Johnson, the reason he fell in the draft was some off the field stuff, but he had flashes in the preseason, then he had flashes during the season. But when you're trying to crack a wide receiver room that has a Chris Godwin, a Mike Evans, Antonio Brown for however long he was there, yeah, that's going to be hard to do, But he still had his flashes, he still had his chances, and I'm hoping, as a Bucs fan, I don't want to see him leave and go to Texans and kick our ass later on in the year. But, I do hope the guy does good. I think he's a great player, and I think he can produce.
I just want to douse a little bit of flames here, JB. I'm not an IDP expert necessarily. I do play in, I guess, really only, maybe 3 leagues that have IDP. But honestly, one of those leagues is a salary cap contract league, and the best kind of thing I discovered in that league is to not spend money on contracts and IDP players, because this league is interesting because there are weekly contracts, which is not something I'm used to. Usually it's okay, a contract for the year, but yeah, you can have a player for just a week and they're off your roster the next week. And at least 2 of my IDP spots right now, I've only got, we have to start 6 and I only have 4 guys on my roster. 2 of those spots are going to be filled with streaming players. I've got a couple guys with like dual position eligibility, so I can kind of mess each week and kind of determine what that's going to be. But most of my thing with IDP is pick the matchups. I'm streaming a lot of the times. I'm picking matchups in drafts where there are IDP players combined. I'm usually waiting till the very end because I feel like, kind of like defenses in fantasy, if for those that play with it, I'm just picking the matchups anyway, and I'm going to be adding guys. So I don't really want to make an early investment on an IDP player because I can't feel like I have to keep them on my roster. If the matchup sucks, obviously you've got the players that are super talented you're going to play every week, but those aren't the guys I'm really looking for in IDP because I want to be as free to play the matchups as possible. So in IDP league, the best advice I can give is invest in other positions, create your strength at all the other positions so you can afford to stream. So that's my big spiel. So I know said he'd be following for big advice. There's probably not too much IDP content coming, Jamie. So hopefully give you so many great content, of course. But yeah,
no. The only IDP content I would suggest is that in a situation where you have a flex and you're allowed a D back, a D lineman, or a linebacker, I always go with the linebacker just because they tend to score more points. So that's my whopping knowledge of the day.
But it all comes down to scoring. If anything, where the tackles are going to be worth at least a point per tackle, that's usually how I would go as well. Now, the one of the leagues I play in is half a point per tackle, so that does make it interesting. But that's also no flexes. It's 2 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, 2 defensive backs. So you kind of have to do that anyway. But the scoring is key to IDP because if it's only half point per tackle, suddenly that concept, Brian, I might go more for the big play guys, the edge rushers, who's going to get the sacks, the potential forced fumbles. And yeah, I mean, in theory, an inside linebacker could get the sacks and those types of big plays as well. But I might put less emphasis on the tackles if the scoring also does it too. So that's the other thing we can say for any league is know your settings. I guess last question here from Jamie. Thoughts on Kevin Harris? So the Patriots drafted him and cut him. I guess saying Gator probably knows, but wasn't he a great prospect at some point? What are you thinking? What do you think about his prospect profile?
I really didn't follow that much. I think this is the Kevin Harris that went to South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. If that's right, Jamie, I think so. And if what I'm thinking, what he's talking about there is because he ran all over us.
Okay.
A couple years ago, he decided to have a breakout year in one game.
I know that in Devy prospects going into last year, he was very well regarded. Along the same lines as our Washington Commanders quarterback Sam Howell, they were both near the top of the chart. So at least he was top 10 to 15. So then he fell off the chart and was a 6th round pick, I guess, this year.
Yeah, and I know that he was the second running back they took, and the guy that they drafted ahead of him, Pierre Strong, did make the team. They went with we already referenced it, David Harris and Ramondre Stevenson seemed like the top 2, but Pierre Strong and Ty Montgomery at running back. So
picked up from the Jets, I believe, right?
Was it the Jets? I can't remember anymore.
I think it was the Jets. But I wanted to respond to something you said a minute ago to Jamie. If you want to follow somebody that with the IDP stuff, I would highly recommend going on to the Going for Two Discord and getting with Josh. He's very, very versed in the IDP world there.
Well, yeah, because even in that last PLP, like I had some ideas, but I was definitely asking Josh for like, hey, what did you think of it? Like this concept, Josh, to kind of just double check and make sure. Yeah, he really knows his IDP stuff, knows all the players really well. But just to touch on Kevin Harris, I had him in one league and I cut him. He was on the taxi squad, and then I was able to. I had enough. I either picked up another rookie. I think that might have been the league I picked up Montreal Washington from Denver, and just another rookie I could put in the taxi squad. So I just dropped Kevin Harris. I don't think as much as like you're barely remembering him as a prospect, like I'm going through my tape, like in my head, like he didn't stand out in the tape evaluation too much. Neither did any of the numbers. So not someone, 6th round capital. I don't know. I think he's a long shot to do anything that you'll regret cutting him. So I have no problem just cutting Kevin Harrison. But I've clearly already done that. So that's my move.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you guys see a reason to hold him?
No, not at all. Especially now that he's a free agent.
Yeah, I couldn't hold him. It would have to be a very, very long bench. 30-man team, 30-man roster before I consider it. So,
yeah. So I guess is there anything to hold on to and continue the episode? Any final topics that we wanted to bring up before we left?
No, I'm glad I finally got to meet Mr. Brian. We get to say goodbye to Kyle all at one time. Well, not say goodbye. We get to let Kyle upgrade.
It's never goodbye to Kyle. I'm in a league with him, enjoying that league, and he's just taking a temporary hiatus from Thursday night. So,
yeah, that's all. And I might still be in the chats, just like Jamie was, just like Destroyer was. We'll see how that trade goes. Thanks for joining us, Patrick. Yeah, and Jamie's been to a lot of shows, but it's good to see some new faces as well. So appreciate that. Everyone watching and also watching after the fact, not just live, but or listening on the audio formats. I really appreciate that. Again, check out goingfor2.com for all the great resources, especially in season. We'll have tons of DFS stuff. Right now, most of the DFS stuff is CFL DFS, to be fair, but check those out as well because I can at least maybe help you win money with CFL DFS. I can't really do that with many other DFS types, but yes, So check all that out. Again, really appreciate everyone, not just tonight, but I guess all off season here on the Dynasty Gambit. And it's funny, new co-host because Brian, you and I became new co-hosts just this off season. Same with Jay, and so now you two can kind of become new co-hosts together as well too. So just the ever-growing family at Going for Two, and I don't know if you guys saw the Going for Two live schedule in season. I think it's 11 shows, and there's only 7 days in a week. We didn't alter the schedule or anything. So I think it's like 2 shows Friday night, 3 shows Saturday. There's at least 1 show every day of the week. So this is going to be a great 2020 season here at Going for Two Live.
It's endless content. The one thing that's really exciting, you mentioned the DFS, but as I've seen, there's content for everybody's taste, and that's the great thing about Jeff. He's always creative minding and thinking of new shows, and I just appreciate the opportunity early in the summer that to do the podcast for Going for Two. So
really appreciate you joining us on here, Devin. And I really appreciate it. Unfortunately, Devin couldn't be here tonight, but Devin will be back next week, and new time. Same channel, same Go Over to Live YouTube place, but instead, because of Thursday Night Football kicking off in literally a week from now, it'll be 7 p.m. Eastern instead of the 8:30 p.m. So all the same with the Monday night pregame show. We start at 7 p.m. Eastern. So just to quickly read over the handles. Brian's at Vandegrad92, Gator's at Fantasy J77. I'm at Senra Says. Jay, any final thoughts for the viewers, listeners?
No, I want to appreciate everybody for showing up tonight and commenting. I really like the comments. Glad I got to meet Brian finally before our big debut on Thursday night next week when we have games coming up. And Kyle, I appreciate you. And again, I sent Jeff a message earlier. I want to thank Jeff for allowing me to get on and have fun with you guys, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining. We're really glad that you got the opportunity because it's really fun talking with you.
Appreciate it.
And yeah, Brian, been a great off season. I'm gonna miss you guys. Again, I'll still be here watching, so I'll get to hear you. You may hear less of me, which may not be a bad thing because I ramble a lot. But I appreciate everyone who's listened to all of my ramblings and our ramblings here on the Dynasty Gambit all year. So on behalf of Jay, on behalf of Brian, I am Kyle Senra, and this is the Dynasty Gambit, signing out and saying bye for this offseason. See you next Thursday for the pregame show.